So this should be recording now, hopefully. And so this is something that I've looked at. So for example, one of the things that I noticed was that sometimes the vocabulary, with you, Natalia, it's totally, your English is really, really good. So some of the vocabulary, such as, in this booklet, in this what do you call it, excerpt of this, oh my gosh, why can't I think of this word? Yeah, I guess in this written piece, it's about 4 book summaries, so 4 books are being summarized, and so it's something that is really, really important, is being able to read a piece of information and then being able to summarize it in a very concise way. So Natalia, I'm sure that you have to do that at work sometimes, and I'm pretty sure that Sonia will come across it in her C1 pretty soon, where she has to read a text and then has to give back certain pieces of information. And so to understand this text down here, first we have to talk about some of the vocabulary that is quite specific to this text. So for example, we have tribalism, a mindset, a lifespan, a demagogue, to dismiss, to distort, to occur, and then fatalism. Okay, so we're going to try and link up which one is which. So I'm not going to do that. So I think that's something that you guys can do by yourself. So I'm just going to pause the recording so that Sonia, when she can do it herself, and then me and you can do that right now. Okay. Okay. So me and Natalia have already now just figured out these ones. I will send you the correct answers, which is which, later on. But Sonia, when you get this, try it yourself. You can use your Google to really figure out which ones are which. Try and figure out for yourself, first of all, what you feel would be the right thing, and then compare it with Google, or the answers that we have. Okay, so we'll move on to the actual text now. And like I said, these are 4 summaries books of 4 summaries. So we have, first of all, Factfulness, Hans Rosling, with Ola Rosling and Anna Rosling Grundund. Then we have Enlightenment Now, Steven Pinker. Steven Pinker is actually a pretty famous author. Rational Optimist, Matt Ridley, and then The Great Surge, Stephen Radlip. Okay, so Natalia, I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to read the summary about the book Factfulness.
Perfect, I will be happy to. So, Factfulness, Hans Rosling with Ola Rosling and Anna Rosling Grundund. In Factfulness, Professor Hans Rosling, along with 2 collaborators, asks simple questions about the world. Questions like, how many girls finish school? And what percentage of the world's population is poor? It turns out the majority of us get the answers to these questions completely wrong. Why does this happen? Factfulness sets out to explain why, showing that there are several instincts humans have that distort our perspective. For example, most people divide the world into USA and them. In addition, we often believe that things are getting worse, and we are consuming large amounts of media that use a sales model based on making us afraid. But according to the authors, the world isn't as bad as we think. Yes, there are real concerns, but we should adopt a mindset of factfulness, only carrying opinions that are supported by strong facts. This book is not concerned with the underlying reasons for poverty or progress, or what should be done about these issues. It focuses on our instinctive biases, offering practical advice to help us see the good as well as the bad in the world.
Okay. So, Natalia, would you say that based on what you've just read, is this a book that you would be interested in?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Right. And why would you say that?
Because I mean, I like the way that he's saying that sometimes our minds, not our minds, but we can we have, or we make, yeah, we have our opinions based on what we hear, what we see, or the people around us, what they say, or they what we hear. And here he's mentioning about the media, and
right.
I mean, I can talk to my friends, but most of the time we talk about things that we have heard in the media.
Right.
So our opinions is based on those things, and I've never thought about it. Now that I read it, like, oh, actually it's true, but I've never thought about it, and I would like to know what the studies are saying about that, and how our minds are set on facts that are actually coming from what is around us.
All right. And I think this is definitely a topic that you can also be, you could label it as being critical. Now, critical does not mean that you are negative. Critical means that you think in a certain way, that you receive a piece of information, regardless of where it comes from, and you take that piece of information first of all at face value. So you just accept it and you read it and you try and understand what it's saying. But then not only do you try and understand what it's saying, but then you ask, where did it come from? Who wrote it? Who presented it? What was their motives for giving me this information? And so this is definitely something that we see nowadays, is that people are consuming, but they're not asking questions. They're just accepting that, oh, well, this was on TV. This is correct, or this is something that is a fair representation of actual facts, whereas in fact it is not. Usually, it is some opinion. It is some distortion of what's actually going on. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next one is Enlightenment Now, Steven Pinker. I'll read this one. Are things getting worse every day? Is progress an impossible goal? In Enlightenment Now, Steven Pinker looks at the big picture of human progress and finds good news. We are living longer, healthier, freer, and happier lives. Pinker asks us to stop paying so much attention to negative headlines and news that declares the end of the world. Instead, he shows us some carefully selected data. In 75 surprising graphs, we see that safety, peace, knowledge, and health are getting better all over the world. When the evidence does not support this argument, however, he dismisses it. Economic inequality, he claims, is not really a problem because it is not actually that important for human well-being. One cannot help wondering how many people actually living in poverty would agree. The real problem, Pinker argues, is that the Enlightenment values of reason and science are under attack. When commentators and demagogues appeal to people's tribalism, fatalism, and distrust, then we are in danger of causing irreparable damage to important institutions like democracy and world cooperation. Okay, so Natalia, what would you say is Steven Pinker trying to get the reader to understand a bit better?
So, in this case, I would need to read it again, but just thinking on what I understood from the paragraph, the 3 paragraphs, is that we think we are in a happy world, but actually that is not true, because we avoid and we don't pay attention to the things that maybe we don't want to hear like the negative things. For example, we live in a well, I live in Germany, so I live in a good country, but and I, you know, I have food in my plate, I have heater, I have everything that I need, but we don't know exactly what's happening in another countries, and because I live in a good place, I feel everyone is in a good conditions or living conditions as I am, and it is not. So what he's trying to see or to say here, Stephen Pinker, is that we should yeah, look at, yeah, well, I don't know if that's exactly what he's trying to say, but sometimes we avoid, you know, paying attention to the whole picture, and especially the meaning is not paying attention of the negative things.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely it. Is that it goes a little bit in hand with the previous summary of you know, this what some people would say doom and gloom. Have you heard that before? So
Nope.
I'll just type it here: doom and gloom. So when you doom something, you are damning it to usually hell. So it's a derivative of the word being damned. So doom, you know, it's the end of the world. Oh, and then gloom is a feeling. I feel gloomy today, and so you kind of feel down. You feel depressed. You feel like, you know, the whole world is against you, and everything is just really negative. And so everything is doomed, so everything's falling apart and everything's gloomy, everything's awful. I think that's very British though, that saying. So but yeah, absolutely, you know,
I like it.
yeah. So a lot of people kind of, because of the media, you know, because of what we're being fed, we feel, you know, here he says negative headlines, you know, and the news that declares the end of the world. But actually, statistically speaking, we have more wealth than we have ever had before. We have the least amount of people in poverty that we've ever had before. But and this is one of the criticisms in the summary, is that he neglects or says that this, you know, the richer are getting richer, the poorer are getting poorer, and this divide, the economic inequality, is not a problem. Now, I would disagree with that. I feel like that is a problem, and economically speaking to Lucas and other people who are relatively in the topic of economics and social economics, definitely say as well that that is a problem. Maybe not right now, but it can be a problem in the future. But he is correct in saying, or there is actually a professor in Toronto who quite rightly uses statistics to back up his claim that we are living in a prosperous time, even for people who live in absolute poverty. This might be, you know, unfair, but we are lifting people out of poverty at a faster rate than ever before. And so that is a really positive thing, but that is never portrayed, that's never communicated to us through the media. So he's also coming back to the text, is also saying that this enlightenment, or the values of enlightenment, so science and reason, are under attack because, you know, people like Trump are, you know, appealing to people who maybe are uneducated, who are relatively simple but good people, who are frustrated, you know, and have a certain prejudice. And so what then happens is that they appeal to these emotional things, and they strike a chord with them. And so then you know, obviously they cause some damage in their actions and in their words, and he then says that this can have some serious, maybe even unrepairable or irreparable damage for the future. Okay. Ed, do you have any questions about that? Anything you want to say, Natalia?
No,
No?
you
Okay.
could really convey the message very well.
Okay. All right. Would you read for us The Rational Optimist then, please?
For more than 200 years, the pessimists have been winning the public debate. They tell us that things are getting worse, but in fact, life is getting better. Income, affordability, and lifespan are rising. Disease, violence, and child mortality are falling. These trends are happening all around the world. Africa is slowly coming out of poverty, just as Asia did before. Yeah, just as Asia did before. The internet, mobile phones, and worldwide trade are making the lives of millions of people much better. Best-selling author Matt Ridley doesn't only explain how things are getting better, he gives us reasons why as well. Shows us how human culture evolves in a positive direction thanks to the exchange of ideas and specialization. This bold book looks at the entirety of human history, from the Stone Age to the 21st century, and changes the notion that it's all going downhill. The glass really is helpful.
Okay. So what do you take from this book?
Um, well, this is something that you were mentioning before,
Mm-hmm.
that that we are very pessimist sometimes, and we think that things are worse than they actually are. And he's giving some facts about why things are going better, or why things are, not as bad as people think. And yeah, he gives the reasons, not only what is happening, but also the reasons why things are going better. And yeah, he's mentioning about ideas of, or examples about, affordability, lifespan raising, and yeah, it's also depending on how we see things. Sometimes, in life we can see that I can think, I have had a worst day of my life, and someone close to me like, well, no, actually, look at this, you have done this and that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
or a mood, or also how we see things. So it's important, or it can make a difference the way that we think, in order to see things in a different way.
Yeah. And then I think that's a very important thing. I actually had a really good conversation yesterday about that. That you depending on how you feel, you sit in the train or in a bus and you look at the people around you, and you make up these stories about these people. You've never spoken to them, you've never seen them before, but just based on how you're feeling in that moment and their facial expression, the way they act, maybe the way they talk, and you don't hear what they say, but you just see their interaction with others. Maybe you create this persona, you create this person in your mind, a fantasy. And so that is extremely dependent. Also, the person that you create in your mind is very dependent on whether you feel pessimistic, so whether you feel like today's going to suck, or optimistic that today's actually going to be a good day. And so that has a huge influence on not just on an international level, whether the world markets are going to go up, or the next World War III, or World War III is going to come around the corner, or it really also has a huge influence on your day-to-day actions and how you perceive the world. This is actually, I think, a book that I would like to read. So yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, perfect, fantastic. All right. Last one. Okay, so The Great Surge, Steve Radler. The majority of people believe that developing countries are in a terrible situation, suffering from incredible poverty, governed by dictators, and with little hope for any meaningful change. But, surprisingly, this is far from the truth. The reality is that a great transformation is occurring. Over the past 20 years, more than 700 million people have increased their income and come out of poverty. Additionally, 6 million fewer children die every year from disease. Millions more girls are in school, and millions of people have access to clean water. This is happening across developing countries around the world. The end of the Cold War, the development of new technologies, and brave new leadership have helped to improve the lives of hundreds of millions of people in poor countries. The Great Surge describes how all of this is happening, and more importantly, it shows us how we can accelerate the process. Okay, I think because we've already spoken about the other books and pretty much this topic, I think we'll leave our own summary
There's
out.
one question about this paragraph. Sorry. So what does it mean, surge, or the Great Surge? Surge.
So a surge, it's like an influx. So if something, so for example, we have in Germany a great surge of immigrants from Syria. All of a sudden, we have lots of people coming from that country over to Germany in a very short period of time. So you would say that is a surge. It's like a wave. All of a sudden, everything's calm, and then there's a surge of something, and you're not prepared. Boom. So yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, and a surge is undefined in its length, in its height. It's just kind of. So here, for example, over the past 20 years, so that's a long period of time that this great surge has been happening. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so again, not just to you, Natalia, but also to Sonia, if there are any words or vocabulary in here, read through it. Listen to the readings of Natalia and myself. Try and follow just listening without having to read it. See if you can understand what's going on. And then just to practice, Sonia, I think it would be great if you make a few notes as to your own opinions. What do you think about each of these books and the things that they contain? And they can be your personal opinions. There is no real right or wrong answer when it comes to an opinion. And it's just about expressing what you feel about a certain one of these summaries. Okay, so we have a few exercises. There are some tasks. I'm going to send you guys these tasks because they're relatively long, and it requires you to keep going back to the text and checking the information. So for example, here you have to figure out which statement belongs to which book. Okay, and then so the second task, we have obviously just the classic, fill in the sentence with the words above. Again, if you're not sure where these sentences are, go back to the text, and that's the whole point of these exercises, is that it's not just filling out the text or trying to get the right answer. It's about making the connection in your mind with the vocabulary, with the sentence structure, with opinions, and being able to formulate this opinion into words, and maybe even put in some of these new vocabulary into some of your summaries. Okay, so my question to you now, Natalia, is: would you read any of these books, and why?
Yes, actually, I would. I am more interested in the first one about the facts. I cannot remember exactly the title. Factfulness. Yeah, factfulness. Because I think that's true. I would like to really understand why we adopt a mindset, just to see in the media, to avoid, if that makes sense, those prejudices. I don't know what's the word.
Prejudices.
Yeah, of like, oh yeah, thinking, getting an opinion based on something that actually is true, or is just a matter of it's actually not real, because in media, we know media, they say whatever they want to, and depending on what they think or whatever. So I do want to understand better the process, so I can make a better um, uh, opinion based on what I think, knowing others' opinions. That makes sense.
Right. And I think one thing that a lot of people forget is that we are all entitled to our own opinions, but it doesn't mean that every opinion is of the same worth. Everybody is allowed to have one, but and this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is fact. Is that just because everybody has an opinion doesn't mean that they're all the same value. So for some people, they have the opinion that the world is flat, and they're allowed to have that opinion. That's great. Um, and they might have their arguments for it, but at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that the world is not flat, and that is based on what? Well, that's based on facts, and I think that's the amazing thing with this book, is that it's talking about that we base our opinions, we create our world based on facts, that we don't allow other opinions to influence us. They can influence us, okay, but that we at least are critical, and we question where does this information come from? Is this quality information? So as a scientist, we are always, when we write a scientific paper, we have to give when we quote someone, we have to obviously citate where we got our source from, and we're not allowed to use any online sources, in the sense that we're not allowed to use Wikipedia, we're not allowed to use anything that is not published and checked by or reviewed by a scientific body. So we're pretty much limited to books, we're limited to scientific papers, which allows us, which actually, it's a lot of work, but it gives us a certain guarantee that the information that we find is of a higher standard than some crazy person making a really good website and it looks very professional, and then just writing some rubbish on there. So yeah, I really like this book. It's really cool. Okay.
Yeah. If I can, for example, make a comment as well about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Because I'm curious, because listening to you, it makes sense that we have to base, what we say, in this case, the science and all that, has to be based on, like, in books and something that has kind of a fundament.
Mm-hmm.
But happens a lot of work when I'm working on legal issues, that
Right.
we also, we base our decisions on laws that are, white and black. I mean, they are clear, but
Mm-hmm.
depending on the lawyer, they can, depending on how they see or interpret
Right.
they can, be completely different sides and say, something is white when actually it's black, and the person is saying, no, this is black, but actually it's white. So sometimes I, also think about that, like, how can people interpret things that are so clear for some people completely different or completely, opposite? And I don't know if that happens for you in science as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have that issue. The best one is nutrition. We have because we know so little about how our bodies actually function, that we have lots of research done by PhD students, master students, bachelor students, by professors all over the world, at the same time posting their own papers on things that they found out. Now, again, if we remove all the papers that are questionable, or where the statistics, and this is maybe going a little off topic, but when you do a study, you cannot or should not rely on what is called the law of small numbers, meaning that you can't base your conclusion on a study that only has 10 people in it. and then take your findings and transfer that to, well, 8 billion people. That it just doesn't work. And so you have the law of large numbers, and that is usually much more representative, which makes sense, of everybody else. And so if we remove those papers that are of the small number law, we are left with relatively valid, very good, reviewed papers. And nutrition, you have you have one corner of the scientists screaming that eating no meat and no animal products is super healthy for you, and they have their data. And then you have in another corner those who say that a balanced diet, including meat, is totally valid. Then you have in the other corner scientists saying that actually if you fast 24 hours, then have one meal and then fast another 24 hours, something called intermittent fasting, you are healthy. And so you have all the best ones, or for us as members, is one glass of red wine a day, is really healthy for you. Um, or, drinking coffee is good for your heart. Just, things like that. And there are studies that prove this, and it's on black and white. You can't argue with the facts that they found out. The problem is that the entire process is so complex that they're maybe all right. It's like you're in a museum, and you see an object in the middle of the museum, and you're just standing at different points in the room, and you see the one thing from different perspectives. With fact, you see it. You don't believe it, you can see it, and then you describe what you see, and that is no less incorrect than the other person who is writing their observation. And so that is it is a problem in the scientific community to come to a consensus about, a definitive yes, that is healthy or that is unhealthy, because there's so much input. And when it comes to lawyers, well, lawyers,
I think you don't like them.
let's not get, yeah. That I think is a topic for in itself. The ability to manipulate facts to serve your own purposes. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. I liked what you said. So very good.
Okay. So yeah, just in closing, the answers are here at the end. They're also so I have a PDF of this at the top here, so I will send both of you that. What I will do is I will upload the video to YouTube and make it a private account, make it a private video, so that only you, Natalia and Sonia, have access to it. Yeah. Okay. So my question now is, based on just what we've gone through, is that the kind of things that you are looking for, Natalia? Do you think this is something that Sonia, is that something that would help her? Or do we want to move in a different direction?
I think this is perfect. I asked my sister to look to the test that she has to take.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So one part is exactly what we are doing.
All right.
So that's totally fine. And if we can do this, different topics, so we get vocabulary from different areas or topics, that would be great. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't. Yes, it was very sad because he couldn't attend to this. He was excited. She was really excited. But I will ask her after she's doing that if she has another idea. So
Mm-hmm.
what else she would need. I know she's following the book as well that she has for to study. I know she also wants to do some writing. So maybe if she has time to do something during the week, maybe the 10 first minutes of the lesson, we can review that homework that she has done by herself. Sometimes she does things that no one is there to correct.
Right. Okay.
So maybe if she has time to do something, then she can come to you and ask about it.
Absolutely, and you know, she's more than welcome there if she during the week does something in her book that she wants to correct and not use up the time here. She can just take a picture of it, and then I'll look at it during the week. That's not a problem. I was just thinking that for writing, if we can find, I guess the best. I mean, you know, we can two birds, one stone. If she wants to practice writing and critical thinking, but also be spiritually uplifted, she can get a conference talk in English and summarize. You know, usually they're put it into points already, and then just summarize those points into maybe one little paragraph. What is this person trying to say? What is the message that is coming across? And that practice, that exercise strengthens critical thinking. It is difficult because you really have to think and try and put it into a concise, very short format, but it definitely helps with writing and reading and you know the whole thing. So that's a really good exercise.
We can do that. Yeah, because maybe she has the book, but that's something that also I want to do. Okay. Personally, because I talk and I can say whatever I think, and you can understand me. But when I'm writing, I realize, okay, this is not the way to say, or I can, you know, try to do it in a different way.
Right. Okay.
Or maybe as simple as, you know, just doing a summary of what we have discussed today. Help me to find, you know, new connectors, you know, in paragraphs, or you know, find new vocabulary to say. So maybe something that you can also think exactly you have done is to give us some homework to do.
Okay. Yeah.
Class, we have something to do. My sister maybe it's easier for her because she has a book, but I don't.
Right.
So
Okay.
me any kind of homework like that, a general conference, read it and do a summary. I'm happy with that. I don't need, you know, like big things.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah, we can definitely work on that.
Perfect. When we are doing a test specific in a topic, maybe I can practice for that topic. So I, practice is not always, you know, a general conference. It's also, you know, business or science or politics. I don't know.
Okay. So yeah, I just had an idea. So this is just for you specifically, Natalia. So I'm going to just stop the recording.